For 30 years, he was the man no one saw, not because he was invisible, because he was everywhere. He was the friendly neighbor who waved from his driveway, the community volunteer who showed up at fundraisers, the amateur clown who made children laugh at parties. He was John Wayne Gacy, and for 6 years, he murdered 33 young men and boys. No one noticed. No one suspected. No one saw the bodies beneath his house. This is the story of a killer who hid in plain sight for 3 decades. A predator who wore a mask of normalcy so convincing that even the police who questioned him went away believing he was innocent. He killed in crowds. He killed in plain view. And no one stopped him because no one believed that a man who made children laugh could also make them disappear. Until a 15-year-old boy named Robert Piest went to a pharmacy to pick up a prescription and never came home. That disappearance would unravel one of the most horrifying serial killer cases in American history, and it would force the world to confront an uncomfortable truth. The most dangerous people are often the ones we trust the most. John Wayne Gacy was born in Chicago in 1942. On the surface, he was a success story. A businessman who ran his own construction company. A Democratic precinct captain who once had his photograph taken with First Lady Rosalynn Carter. A husband and father. A respected member of his community. He was also a sexual predator who had been convicted of sodomy in Iowa in 1968 and served 18 months in prison. But that was in the past. He had served his time. He had moved on. Or so everyone believed. After his release, Gacy moved to Chicago. He married again. He started a construction business. He became involved in local politics. He volunteered as a clown at children's hospitals and charity events. He called himself Pogo the Clown. Children loved him. Adults trusted him. He was the kind of man who would do anything for anyone. He let neighborhood kids swim in his pool. He hired teenagers to work for his construction company. He seemed like a good guy. But beneath the clown makeup and the community service, something else was growing. Gacy was attracted to teenage boys and young men. He would lure them to his home with promises of work or money. Once they were inside, he would restrain them, assault them, and strangle them. Some he killed in the first encounter. Others he tortured for hours before ending their lives. He buried most of them in the crawl space beneath his house. The crawl space was dark, damp, unfinished. A space meant for pipes and insulation, not for bodies. But to Gacy, it was a graveyard. By the time he was caught, 29 bodies would be recovered from that crawl space. 4 more were found in the Des Plaines River, where he had dumped them after running out of room under his home. And 33 families would learn that their missing sons had been there all along, hidden beneath a house on a quiet suburban street. The first victim was Timothy McCoy, 16 years old. He had run away from home and was hitchhiking to Chicago. Gacy picked him up, took him home, and stabbed him to death. It was 1972. Gacy had been out of prison for less than 2 years. He buried Timothy in the crawl space. Over the next 6 years, the bodies accumulated. John Butkovich, 17. He worked for Gacy's construction company and had argued with Gacy over unpaid wages. He disappeared in 1975. His car was found in a parking lot. He was never seen alive again. Darrell Sampson, 19. He disappeared in 1976 after leaving a friend's house. His body was found in the Des Plaines River months later. Michael Marino, 14. He and a friend went missing after leaving a party. Their bodies were found in the river in 1977. And on. 33 names. 33 lives. But here's what haunts investigators to this day. Many of these boys were never reported missing. Some had run away from home before. Their families assumed they had run away again. Some were foster children with no one to look for them. Some were gay or perceived as runaways. And in the 1970s, that stigma kept families silent. We have to overcome the stigma of that era, Detective Jason Moran said decades later. Families may have thought their son ran off or was living a different lifestyle. We want them to come forward now. 4 years, the bodies piled up. And no one noticed. Because Gacy was careful. He chose victims who wouldn't be missed. Teenage runaways. Young men estranged from their families. Boys who existed on the margins of society. He preyed on the invisible, and for 6 years he got away with it. John Wayne Gacy was a master of deception. He understood something that most people never consider. The human brain sees what it expects to see. People expected a clown to be funny, so Gacy was funny. People expected a businessman to be successful, so Gacy talked about his contracts, his employees, his plans for expansion. People expected a neighbor to be friendly, so Gacy waved from his driveway and let kids swim in his pool. He gave people what they expected, and they stopped looking. In 1978, a teenage employee of Gacy's went missing. His name was Robert Piest. He was 15 years old. He had gone to a pharmacy to pick up a prescription for his mother. Gacy was at the same pharmacy, discussing a construction bid with the owner. Robert Piest was never seen again. His mother reported him missing immediately. She was not like the other families. She did not assume he had run away. She did not accept that he might be gone forever. She demanded that the police investigate. And for the first time, someone was looking. The police questioned Gacy. He denied knowing Robert. He said he had been at the pharmacy but had left before Robert arrived. He was calm, cooperative, convincing. But the police had a warrant to search his home. On December 13, 1978, they arrived at 8213 West Somerdale Avenue. The house looked ordinary, clean, well-maintained. A Christmas tree in the window. But when officers opened the crawl space, they found something no one expected. Human remains. Dozens of them. Crushed lime covering the bodies to mask the smell. One officer later described the stench as unforgettable. The decomposition had soaked into the foundation. The house itself was a tomb. By the time the excavation was complete, 29 bodies had been recovered from the crawl space. 4 more were found in the river. John Wayne Gacy had been living on top of a graveyard, and no one knew. The excavation of Gacy's home was one of the largest forensic investigations in American history. For weeks, investigators worked in the cramped crawl space, carefully removing soil and sifting for remains. The bodies had been buried in layers, some on top of others, as Gacy ran out of space and simply dug deeper. Some victims had been buried with their clothes still on. Others had been wrapped in plastic. All had been killed by strangulation or suffocation, though one victim, Timothy McCoy, the first, had been stabbed. The medical examiner's office worked around the clock to identify the remains. In the 1970s, identification relied on dental records and fingerprints. Many victims had no dental records. Many families had never reported their sons missing. By the end of the investigation, only 25 of the 33 victims had been identified. 8 remained unknown. Their jawbones were preserved in containers, stored with the Cook County Medical Examiner's Office, waiting for technology to advance enough to identify them. For 30 years, those jawbones sat in storage. Then, in 2009, without notifying investigators, the medical examiner's office buried them in an unmarked pauper's grave. Detectives were horrified. They had been waiting for DNA technology to catch up. Now they had to dig up the bones again. In 2011, Sheriff Tom Dart's office obtained a court order and exhumed the remains. They found 8 containers, each holding a victim's jawbones and teeth. They flew them to a lab in Texas for DNA testing. "I completely forgot or didn't know there were all these unidentifieds," Dart admitted. But the work continued. By 2011, DNA profiles had been secured for 6 of the 8 unknown victims. Detectives began urging families of missing young men from the 1970s to come forward and submit DNA samples. "These are 8 people that deserve more," Dart said. "These are 8 individuals that right now are nothing more than just forgotten people that were murdered by one of the most evil persons ever to walk the earth. They deserve closure." Today, some of those victims still have not been identified. Their families may never know what happened to them. They may never have closure. But the search continues. John Wayne Gacy's trial began on February 6, 1980. He was charged with 33 counts of murder. The prosecution presented overwhelming evidence. The bodies in the crawl space, the eyewitness testimony of survivors who had escaped, Gacy's own confessions to investigators. Gacy's defense was insanity. His lawyers argued that he was mentally ill, that he could not control his actions, that he deserved mercy. The jury was not convinced. They deliberated for less than 2 hours before returning a verdict: guilty on all 33 counts. The judge sentenced Gacy to death. At the sentencing, Gacy spoke. He did not apologize. He did not express remorse. He said he was being persecuted because he was gay. He said he was a victim of a society that didn't understand him. He said he was innocent. No one believed him. On May 10, 1994, John Wayne Gacy was executed by lethal injection at Stateville Correctional Center in Illinois. His last words were reported to be, "Kiss my ass." 33 families had waited years for justice. Some of them got it. Some of them never would, because their sons' bodies were never identified, never returned to them, never properly laid to rest. Gacy took the location of some of his victims to the grave. He never told investigators where all the bodies were. He never gave the families the closure they deserved. But the evidence he left behind, the crawl space, the remains, the confession, was enough to ensure he would never hurt anyone again. The story of John Wayne Gacy does not end with his execution, because 8 of his victims have never been identified. Their bodies were exhumed in 2011. Their jawbones were flown to a lab in Texas. DNA profiles were created, but without families to match them to. The profiles are just data. For 30 years, the Cook County Sheriff's Office has been asking for help. Detectives urge relatives of anyone who disappeared between 1970 and 1978, and who is still unaccounted for, to come forward and submit DNA samples. "I'm hoping the stigma has lessened," Detective Jason Moran said. "That people can put family disagreements and biases against sexual orientation, drug use behind them to give these victims a name." Some of these victims were never reported missing. Some families assumed their sons had run away. Some were too ashamed to come forward. Some simply didn't know where to look. Now, decades later, technology has caught up, and the sheriff's office is hoping that families will finally come forward. They were young men with futures, who at some point had families that cared about their kid, Sheriff Dart said. Until the dead are identified, it's like they didn't even exist. Today, the case remains open. Not to find the killer, he is dead, but to find the victims' names, to give them back their identities, to let them be remembered not as numbers in a case file, but as sons, brothers, friends, to let them exist again. John Wayne Gacy's story is not just about a killer who evaded capture for 6 years. It's about how predators hide in plain sight, how they use our assumptions against us, how they become invisible by being exactly what we expect them to be. His story offers lessons that can protect us all. Lesson 1. Trust your instincts, not appearances. Gacy was a clown, a businessman, a community leader. He looked like someone you could trust. But our instincts are not fooled by appearances. If something feels wrong about someone, it doesn't matter how many children they make laugh or how many charity events they attend. Trust your gut. It's telling you something your eyes can't see. Lesson 2. People who seem too good to be true often are. Gacy was everywhere. He volunteered. He participated. He made sure everyone knew his name. He was building a reputation to hide behind. If someone seems desperate to be seen as a good person, ask yourself why. Truly good people don't need to convince you. They just are. Lesson 3. Stigma kills. Some of Gacy's victims were never reported missing because their families were ashamed of them. Ashamed of their sexuality. Ashamed of their choices. Ashamed to admit they existed. That shame allowed Gacy to keep killing. Because no one was looking for the boys no one wanted to claim. Don't let stigma prevent you from seeking justice. Report missing people. Advocate for the vulnerable. Every person matters, regardless of their circumstances. Lesson 4. Check the crawl space. This is both literal and metaphorical. Look beneath the surface. Ask questions. Investigate the things people don't want you to see. The crawl space beneath Gacy's house was dark, cramped, and hidden. No one looked there because no one thought to look. But the truth was buried there for 6 years. What are you not looking at in your own life? What are you avoiding because it's uncomfortable? Lesson 5. Evil wears a mask. The most dangerous people are not the ones who look dangerous. They are the ones who look safe. The ones we trust. The ones we invite into our homes, our lives, our hearts. Gacy wore a clown mask, but his real mask was his smile, his friendliness, his normalcy. Don't be fooled by the mask. Look at the person behind it. And if something doesn't add up, don't ignore it. Lesson 6. It's never too late to seek justice. Some of Gacy's victims remain unidentified to this day. Their families may still be out there, unaware that their loved one was a victim of one of the worst serial killers in American history. If you have a family member who went missing in the 1970s, particularly in the Chicago area, contact the Cook County Sheriff's Office. Submit a DNA sample. You could help give a victim back their name. It's been decades, but it's not too late. Lesson 7. See what others don't. Gacy killed for 6 years because no one was looking. No one saw the pattern. No one connected the disappearances. No one questioned the friendly neighbor. Be the person who sees. Be the person who asks. Be the person who reports. You might save a life. Subscribe for more chilling true crime stories.